Why did no one look at her when she walked in? And why did that feel like a mistake? The heavy steel doors of Fort Liberty's mess hall creaked open, spilling a blade of harsh Nevada sunlight across the floor. No one turned. Not a single head lifted from trays or conversation. 200 elite soldiers packed into the cavernous room, and yet not one pair of eyes paused on the woman who stepped inside. Her boots struck the polished concrete with muted, steady taps, blonde hair tied back in a simple ponytail, standard fatigues hanging loose on her frame, no rank insignia, no unit patch, no visible tether to the power structures that ruled this place. She moved as if passing through another world entirely, unseen, irrelevant. To most, she looked like an administrative stray who'd wandered too far from her desk. But if anyone had truly been watching, they might have noticed how her gaze swept the room in a silent circuit. Doors, angles, sight lines, weapons, potential choke points. The scan was methodical, surgical, muscle memory, not thought. No one noticed. No one except Major Wesley Barnes, the base's intelligence officer. He glanced up from his seat near the wall, caught sight of her, and froze. The blood drained from his face like someone had cut the strings holding him upright. His coffee cup trembled in his grip before he forced his eyes back down to the table. He had seen her file once, or what was left of it after the black marker had devoured nearly every word. Catherine Reynolds, Kate, though almost no one living still had the right to call her that. Officially killed in action. Afghanistan, 5 years ago. Body never recovered. A star on a wall in Langley and a sealed record buried deeper than most generals could reach. And yet here she was, walking calmly across the mess hall with a tray balanced in her hands. A ghost wearing skin. She took an empty table in the far corner, sat with perfect posture back to the wall. Coffee black, protein, vegetables, carbohydrates, each portion aligned with geometric care. Her hands folded around the mug like a ritual. Beneath the table, her fingertips moved in subtle, rhythmic patterns against her thigh, an old combat sequence, traced unconsciously, as if her body were remembering what her mind refused to say. The noise of the room flowed around her, ignoring her. Laughs, challenges, war stories, the sharp scent of weapon oil clinging to fatigues. Somewhere near the center of the room, a ring of power held court. Lieutenant James Carter and his squad, the crown princes of Fort Liberty's Special Forces candidates. Carter sat tall, broad shoulders and a jaw that looked carved by war itself. West Point legacy, top of his class, commendations from Syria. The kind of man others naturally followed, and who had never known what it meant to be overlooked. Around him, 5 other prodigies of war clustered like planets around a sun: Miller, the weapons savant; Garcia, the tech genius with nervous hands; Thompson, a wall of muscle wrapped in easy laughter; Peterson, calculating and cold; Walsh, silent-eyed, ghost-like. They had the swagger of men who believed history was already writing their names. Untouchable, unstoppable, unaware of how close they sat to the edge of something they couldn't see coming. Peterson noticed her first. "New admin," he muttered, nodding subtly toward her. "Probably," Garcia murmured, already bored. "Paper pusher." But Peterson kept watching, eyes narrowing. "No, look how she sits, back to the wall, eyes on exits." Carter glanced over, dismissive. Another intel washout from Quantico. Still, something about her stillness itched at him, like an alarm just under hearing. "She's making you look soft," Peterson whispered. "Letting someone like that just walk in here. This is supposed to be our house." The words struck their mark. Beneath Carter's practiced grin, the old acid stirred the echo of failure he carried like shrapnel. A memory of frozen limbs, of Colonel Harrison bleeding out while Carter stood rooted in Syrian sand. Too slow, too human. "Watch," Carter said quietly, rising from his seat. "I'll show you how we keep standards." His squad rose with him, predators in motion. Conversations tapered off around them, the air sharpening as the room sensed blood in the water. No one stopped them. This was tradition, hierarchy enforcing itself, the old ritual of dominance. Colonel Jonathan Reynolds, commanding officer, watched from the officer's table near the wall. His weathered face betrayed nothing, but his knuckles whitened around his mug as Carter's squad began their slow prowl across the room. Kate didn't look up. "Lost your way to the typing pool, sweetheart." Carter's voice cut through the hush, smooth and sharp as broken glass. His squad fanned behind him in a flawless V, an intimidation formation drilled by instinct. She continued eating, eyes fixed on her plate, calm, mechanical, each motion precise. Her breathing didn't change. Her posture didn't shift. Only the faintest tightening at the corners of her eyes hinted she'd even heard him. Her silence became something heavier, a void in the expected script. Carter felt it like a draft under a locked door. "She's making you look weak," Peterson whispered, poison dripping. The air seemed colder around her, like the drop before an artillery strike. Carter stepped closer. "I'm talking to you." Slowly, her eyes lifted to meet his. And for one heartbeat, Carter forgot how to breathe. No fear, no anger, no defiance, just a quiet, clinical assessment, the way a surgeon might look at a tumor before the first cut. He was back in Syria, the smell of smoke, the flash, Harrison's blood blooming through his uniform, that same stare, death approaching with deliberate patience. Then Thompson, towering behind him, flicked her water bottle with a fingertip. It toppled. Water spread across the table in ripples, dripping steadily to the floor. "This ain't a place for softies," Thompson rumbled. Classic psychological warfare. Force her to flinch, force her to break. She didn't. She reached for a napkin, movements precise, deliberate, each stroke erasing the water as though it had never existed. Her grip on the cloth too tight, knuckles white. Not fear, restraint. Miller's sharp eyes caught the scars across her hands, the quiet definition beneath loose sleeves. Those weren't administrative hands. She folded the napkin, stood slowly, fluid, balanced like rising smoke. She said nothing, made no move to defend or explain. She simply stood, tray in hand, waiting for them to move. The room's gravity shifted. Carter's laugh sounded hollow. "That's right, run along." But she wasn't running. She walked past them, straight-backed and silent, dropping her tray at the collection point. Then, without a word, she turned left, toward the training grounds, toward the obstacle course, the kill house, the live-fire range. Not fleeing. Choosing her battlefield. Through the glass, they watched her pass from sunlight into shadow. A still figure crossing the open yard, with the unhurried stride of someone who knew every step in advance. "Why did that feel like she was letting us live?" Thompson whispered. No one answered. Across the mess hall, Colonel Reynolds set down his coffee with careful hands. He pulled out a secure phone and typed 3 words. "She's here, confirmed." The reply came instantly. "Protocol Lazarus active." Reynolds looked up at the wall clock. 12:15. Things were moving faster than he'd hoped. He caught Major Barnes' eye across the room and gave a slight nod. Barnes rose and left without finishing his meal. The loudspeaker crackled to life. "Emergency Tactical Readiness Assessment, Simulated Hostage Rescue, Live Fire Conditions, Selection in 15 minutes. Chaos ignited. Soldiers surged from their seats, the mess hall dissolving into motion. Plates clattered, boots thundered, the air filled with the hard edge of adrenaline. Carter's team prepped with flawless efficiency, strapping gear, checking weapons, syncing comms. The familiar ritual calmed him, mostly, but his hands still trembled faintly when he buckled his vest. He couldn't stop thinking about her. He didn't know why. Captain Hayes read the roster at the staging ground, nomming the chosen 6 teams. Carter's squad, of course, made the cut. Then, as the crowd thinned, a voice cut through like a suppressed shot. "I'll take the assessment." Silence, heads turned. She stood at the edge of the gathering, posture straight, eyes unreadable. The woman from the mess hall. "You'll get yourself killed," Carter said before he could stop himself. His voice cracked on the last word. Hayes hesitated, looking toward Colonel Reynolds, who had appeared silently at the doorway. Something passed between them, silent, heavy. Then Hayes nodded. "Operative approved." She vanished into the women's locker room. 7 minutes later she emerged. The same uniform, but somehow not the same woman. Her hair bound in a severe bun. Her stance quiet, anchored like gravity had chosen her personally. As she passed Colonel Reynolds, her hand brushed her collar. A flash of silver glinted, a medallion shaped like a small eagle. Reynolds gave the faintest nod. "Godspeed," he murmured. The kill house loomed at the far end of the training yard, a concrete labyrinth of reconfigurable rooms, a monument to controlled violence. Today it had been dressed as a nightmare. Hostels, hostages, booby traps, live rounds. 5-man teams would rotate through. Success meant advancement. Failure meant reassignment. Carter's team went first. They were perfect, almost. 12 minutes 43 seconds. 2 civilian casualties. A flashbang too close triggered a tremor in Carter's hands. A hostage dummy shaped like Harrison rattled him for 3 full seconds before he recovered. Enough for the evaluators to make notes. Then she stepped inside. "Alone?" "No," Garcia muttered. "Protocol requires at least 3. She can't." "She can," Colonel Reynolds said from the shadows. "Exceptions exist." And then silence. She flowed through the kill house like water seeking cracks in stone. A pressure plate that had caught Miller didn't even slow her. She didn't overwhelm defenses, she ghosted through them. No wasted motion. No wasted shots. Every round landed center mass or cranium. Every step exploited angles no one had taught. She moved like the rulebook had never existed. "That's not in the manual," Walsh whispered. "Because it's classified beyond your clearance," Reynolds said quietly. Her rifle jammed halfway through. For one heartbeat her mask cracked. Memory flashed raw in her eyes. Then gone. Jam cleared, sidearm drawn, momentum never breaking. The cameras almost missed it. 6 minutes 18 seconds. 0 civilian casualties. Half their time alone. When she emerged, her breathing was calm, gear spotless. She walked past Carter as if he were a shadow on the wall. And for a single heartbeat, her eyes met his. He felt seen, completely, as though she'd sifted through every hidden fear in him and weighed them and found them small. Colonel Reynolds's voice broke the silence. "Lieutenant Colonel Catherine Reynolds," he announced, "my niece." A ripple passed through the room like shockwave. Killed in action, Afghanistan, 2018. Yet standing here, alive. And before Carter could breathe, alarms began to scream. Red lights strobed. A voice roared over the PA. "Security breach, north perimeter, this is not a drill." Kate checked her watch. 12:28. The countdown had reached 0. How did the past find her here, after they buried her with a star on the wall? The alarms howled through the Nevada heat, echoing off concrete like the roar of something ancient stirring. Red strobes flashed across the base yard, splintering the afternoon into jolting fragments of color. Soldiers poured from buildings, shouting codes, racking rifles, taking cover behind sandbag positions. The mess hall emptied in controlled chaos, boots pounding, trays clattering to the floor. Carter stood frozen at the staging ground, helmet half buckled in his hands, as the world unraveled around him. Across the courtyard, Catherine Reynolds was already moving. No panic, no hurry, just a clean, practiced vector cutting through the chaos. She crossed the training field with mechanical grace, heading not away from danger, but toward the underground command center at the heart of Fort Liberty. Colonel Reynolds caught up to her on the move, breath clipped, face stone. "They're here for the lab," he said. Kate didn't break stride, Just like I said. His eyes flicked to her, a storm barely restrained. Where? The research team. Phoenix Bunker, Harris is with them. That name cut through her mind like a blade. Dr. Alina Harris, 70 years old, steel-gray hair, eyes like cracked glass. One of the original scientists from Project Nomad, the program that had built Kate and her brother out of flesh and something else entirely. Harris had been there when they were remade, when their bones broke and healed stronger, when their nerves were rewired to kill pain and feel almost nothing else. Kate shoved the thought aside. Not now. They reached the blast doors of the command bunker. Security personnel scrambled to open them, scanners flashing over their IDs. The steel slabs yawned open on hydraulics, swallowing them into the earth. Cold air hit like a slap. Inside, the command center seethed with controlled urgency, screens flashing, voices clipped, keyboards clattering. Red icons swarmed across the perimeter feed. Contact North Sector, an operator reported. 12 confirmed hostiles more likely. The screen showed them, black-clad figures moving with perfect discipline, advancing between storage hangars. Tier 1 tactics, clean shots, minimal exposure, purpose, not chaos. Not extremists. Professionals. Cerberus, Kate said flatly. The name tasted like metal. The same covert network that had orchestrated the ambush in Afghanistan, the one that had killed her entire team and her younger brother Michael, the ambush that had ended her life on paper. Reynolds nodded grimly. We've matched their equipment to your reports. Kate studied the tactical map, mind slicing through layers of possibility. Their pattern was surgical, bypassing strongpoints, threading corridors, cutting power grids, a direct line toward the Phoenix lab. I need operational control, she said. Not a request, a statement. Reynolds hesitated for one heartbeat, then. Granted. Effective immediately, Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds has tactical command. All personnel will treat her orders as mine. The room shifted. Surprise whispers, but discipline held. Kate stepped to the holographic table, her shadow cutting through the red light. Alpha secures the perimeter bridge. Bravo locks down corridors Charlie 7 and Delta 9. Charlie evacuates non-essential personnel to hardened shelters. Delta becomes our mobile QRF. Then her eyes locked on Carter and his squad standing near the wall, all geared, silent, staring at her like she'd stepped out of a myth. Lieutenant, she said, your team is with me. We go to the Phoenix lab. Something flickered across Carter's face, shame, disbelief, maybe fear. He tried to humiliate her less than an hour ago. Now he was expected to follow her into hell. The old fear gnawed at his ribs. What if he froze again? What if he killed them all by hesitation? Ma'am, he said finally, defaulting to discipline. Her eyes lingered on him, calm, measuring. I don't need your respect, Lieutenant. I need your obedience. People will die today. I intend to minimize that number. The command center surged into motion around them. Security teams armed up. Techs opened encrypted channels. Medics staged stretchers. Orders crackled through headsets. Bootsteps hammered down corridors. Colonel Reynolds watched her from the shadows, pride tangled with something heavier. Regret, maybe. Kate, he said quietly as she checked her rifle, there's something you should know about Phoenix. She paused. It wasn't just about enhanced soldiers, he continued. Harris and her team are working on something else, beyond physical. Her eyes narrowed. Define beyond. Memory transfer technology, he said. The ability to copy an operator's skills and experiences into another mind. The words hit like shrapnel. Michael. They've been trying to preserve Michael. His instincts, his brilliance, everything that made him her equal, even after death. That's what Cerberus wants, Kate murmured. Exactly. No need for years of training, just download. She glanced at her watch. 7 minutes since the first alarms. Cerberus would have countermeasures ready, probably an inside man, maybe more than one. Trust no one outside this room, she said. Then louder to Carter's team, "Gear up, full load, we move in 3." They dispersed to the armory alcove. Kate crossed to the central comm station and held out her hand. "Patch me to the base-wide channel." The comm tech obeyed. Her voice filled the compound, calm and sharp as cold iron. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Catherine Reynolds. Fort Liberty is under attack by hostile Tier 1 operators targeting classified research. All personnel implement emergency protocols Alpha through Charlie. This is not a drill. Defend yourselves accordingly." A pause, then quieter, almost personal. "To the hostiles currently on my base, you have one chance to surrender. After that, no quarter will be given. Your employers will abandon you, just as they abandoned my team in Afghanistan. Make better choices than we did." She handed the mic back. Carter's team returned, armored, helmeted, grim-faced. Their earlier arrogance was gone, burned off in the red light. She looked once more at her uncle, his face carved from stone. They shared a look that held decades. He had been the one who pushed her and Michael into Delta, the one who'd believed when everyone else doubted. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "finish the mission." "All the way through," he replied, the words Michael had whispered with his dying breath. Kate turned to the squad. "Move out." They exited the command bunker into a world on fire. Gunfire rattled from the northern perimeter, precision bursts, not panic, professional, floodlights carved through drifting smoke. Shadows of soldiers darted across the walls, colliding in sudden flashes of muzzle light. Fort Liberty was becoming a battlefield. Kate led them through an underground connector, a Cold War-era utility corridor lined in steel and shadow. The passage stretched ahead like the artery of some buried machine. Red emergency beacons pulsed, turning the dust-filled air into frozen snapshots of motion. Carter moved behind her, headset crackling, comlink steady in his ear. Miller and Thompson flanked, rifles raised. Garcia tapped frantically at his tablet, scanning for enemy signals. Walsh covered their six, silent as ever. "Why broad daylight?" Carter asked, voice low. "Night would give them advantage." "They need Harris and her team alive and active," Kate replied without looking back. "Phoenix trials run in daytime." The tunnel forked ahead. Right led to the main entrance of the research wing. She went left without hesitation. "Ma'am," Miller began, "the lab is accessible through multiple routes," she cut him off. "They'll be waiting at the main, we won't." She stopped at a blank steel wall, flipped aside an electrical panel, entered a 16-digit code without looking at the keys. Hidden hydraulics groaned. The wall hissed open to reveal a narrow maintenance shaft bathed in cold blue light. Garcia blinked. "How did you?" "Studied the original 1962 blueprints," she said, stepping through. "Cold War paranoia, always alternate exits." They advanced single file through the claustrophobic passage. The distant gunfire grew louder, joined now by the muted thump of detonations. The air smelled of ozone and oil. Kate froze mid-step, raised a fist, stilled them. She listened, then pulled a mirror from her vest and slid it around the next corner. "3 hostiles," she whispered, "full tactical kit, guarding the Phoenix service entrance." "Frontal assault," Carter murmured. "No overlapping fields, they'd cut us down." She withdrew a slim electronic wafer from her vest. "Garcia, environmental controls, Sector 7G." He worked for 30 seconds, then, "Ready." "On my mark, trigger fire suppression, kill lights." She looked each of them in the eye, calm, anchoring. Thompson, Miller flashbang left and right. Walsh, overwatch. Carter, center with me. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The corridor plunged into darkness. Fire suppressant roared, filling the air with blinding white vapor. Flashbangs detonated like trapped lightning, shockwaves punching the walls. Kate surged through the fog, Carter at her shoulder. 3 suppressed shots. Three silhouettes collapsed before they could react. "Clear," she said, already moving. Garcia hacked the panel. The service doors parted on pneumatic size, revealing the decontamination chamber beyond. Empty. Too empty. "This should be guarded," Kate muttered. The hair on her neck rose. Carter's radio crackled. "Lieutenant, be advised, multiple breaches reported. 20+ hostiles, north and east quadrants compromised." "They're spreading our defense," Carter relayed. "It's a diversion," Kate said. "Main assault is chaos, real teams slipping in another way." "Show me all access points," she ordered. Garcia pulled schematics onto his tablet. A thin blue line traced from the underground power plant straight into the Phoenix core. "They're already inside," Kate said. The airlocks cycled open. They entered the main lab. It was like walking into the future's ribcage. Banks of glass consoles, cables coiled like veins, a central medical chair bristling with neural interfaces, surrounded by humming processors. Screens danced with brainwave graphs, algorithm streams, glowing progress bars. No scientists, no guards. But the systems were running. "They've started the transfer," Kate said, eyes hard. She moved to the main console, hands a blur on the keys. "My brother helped design these systems." The main display showed a bar, 64% complete. "What are they transferring?" Miller asked, eyes on the door. "The combined combat experience of 30 Delta operators," Kate said, "including Michael." Garcia exhaled. "With that they could create perfect soldiers," she finished, "with none of our restraint." A metallic clang sounded from the far wall. A service door slid open. Black-clad figures emerged, 4 operators, escorting a 5th man with command in his gait. Behind them shuffled a thin, bleeding figure in a lab coat, Dr. Harris. A trickle of blood ran from her temple. Kate signaled her team to hold. Her gaze locked on the leader. Something about his movements, the way he gestured. Recognition hit like an old wound. "Hayes." Captain Andrew Hayes, the same officer who had approved her kill house run less than an hour ago. Carter's eyes went wide. The selection officer. "Cerberus," Kate said. "Inside man, all along." Hayes gestured toward the main console. The progress bar ticked to 78%. "If they get that module off base, they win," Kate said. Her voice was ice. "We stop it here." "How?" Carter asked, fingers trembling over his rifle. Kate's eyes swept the room like a hawk calculating wind. 4 operators plus Hayes, hostage, multiple angles, no clean solution. She breathed once, deep, steady. "I create an opening, you get Harris out, and you destroy that module. Whatever it takes." And before Carter could argue, she was already stepping into the open. Why was she walking toward men who had already killed her once? Kate stepped into the open, her boots striking the polished floor with soft, lethal finality. The sterile hum of the Phoenix lab wrapped around her like static. White light bled down from surgical lamps, reflecting in sterile chrome and polished glass. 5 Cerberus operators pivoted their rifles toward her in perfect synchrony. Suppressed barrels tracked her like watchful predators. Hayes stood at their center, helmet off, hair damp with sweat, his face wearing that same bland calm he'd used earlier to announce her for the assessment, as if nothing here had changed. But everything had. "Kate Reynolds," Hayes said almost warmly. "The Lazarus rumor lives and breathes." Her hands were empty, no rifle raised, no threat displayed, just that still, centered calm, a silence so absolute it made Carter's team hold their breath from the shadows behind the containment racks. They watched her like men watching lightning choose its ground. "You were supposed to die in Afghanistan," Hayes said. "You could have stayed dead, quiet, honored, but you had to crawl back." Her voice came soft. "I wasn't crawling." That faint smile of his, "You should have stayed buried." Behind him, the main console chimed, 84% complete. The transfer kept crawling forward, line by glowing line, as though the machine itself were ignoring the gravity in the room. "Let her talk," Hayes said casually to his men. "I want to hear her final excuse." Kate's gaze flicked once toward Dr. Harris, slumped against the workstation, her breathing shallow. A thin wire ran from her skull cap to the main processor cluster. Her mind was the bridge carrying all that stolen knowledge out. Harris's eyes fluttered open just enough to see Kate, and something like relief ghosted across them, thin as smoke. Kate drew a slow breath. "Afghanistan," she said quietly. "Cerberus staged the ambush. I buried 9 people there, including my brother." Hayes tilted his head. "We didn't kill them. We refined them. The transfer technology was Michael's design. He wanted his brilliance to survive him." "He didn't want it stolen," she said. "Survival doesn't care what we want," Hayes replied. "Only what endures." Behind her, Carter whispered into comms, "Say the word, we breach." "Negative," she whispered back without moving her lips. "I said I'd make the opening." Her gaze held Hayes's, steady, endless. "You built this whole war machine on ghosts," she said, "but ghosts don't obey." Hayes's smile faltered, just slightly, enough. She moved. A blur of motion, faster than the blink Carter didn't realize he'd taken. Her left hand hooked the edge of a surgical tray, flinging it in a silver flash across the lab. It smashed into the overhead lights. Darkness plunged down as glass showered. Simultaneously, her right boot kicked the release on a nitrogen canister by her foot, sending it spinning across the floor in a hissing cloud. White vapor blossomed, swallowing the room. Hayes shouted. Kate dove through the vapor as bullets hissed where she'd been, body low, legs snapping in coiled bursts of movement. She hit the deck behind the neural chair, drew her suppressed sidearm, and fired 2 rounds into the ceiling sprinkler heads. Water erupted, alarms screamed, sparks danced across consoles. "Now," she barked. Carter's team surged from cover like unleashed wolves. Thompson and Miller opened with coordinated suppressive fire, forcing the Cerberus operators behind cover. Walsh picked a clean angle high on the left, 3 shots, 3 precise impacts to armor plates, staggering enemies backward. Garcia slid to the main console, fingers flying to halt the transfer stream. 92% complete. Kate broke from cover in a fluid pivot, closing on the nearest Cerberus operative before he could recover from the chaos. Her elbow slammed into his throat, one sharp crack, as she twisted his rifle free and fired 3 blind shots toward the far wall. Hayes ducked behind the server rack, lips curled in the shadow of a grin. "You can't stop the data," he called. "It's uploading offsite. Even if you burn this place, it lives." "Not if I rewrite it first," Garcia muttered through clenched teeth, eyes locked on the code. "I can corrupt the outbound packet, but I need 30 seconds. "You've got 15, Kate snapped. Bullets shattered glass around her. She rolled behind a console, breath ragged, then stilled. Not fear, calculation. Her mind ticking like a metronome counting death. Michael had once said, "The trick isn't being faster, it's being certain." She rose certain. A burst of suppressive fire from Carter cleared her lane. She vaulted a railing, closing distance in a blur. 2 Cerberus operators fell under her fire before they could pivot. The third met her head-on, grappling. He was larger, stronger, trained to kill without hesitation. She didn't hesitate. Her blade flashed from her boot sheath, one clean arc. He dropped silently. 96%. "Almost there," Garcia began. Then Hayes was suddenly behind him. No one saw him move. One instant he was in cover. The next he was there, pistol pressed to Garcia's helmet. Kate froze mid-step. "Stop the upload and he dies," Hayes said. "Finish it," Garcia hissed, eyes wild. "Corrupt the packet." Hayes drove the muzzle harder into his skull. One keystroke and your brain decorates the wall. Kate's mind raced. Hayes wasn't bluffing. Garcia was the only one who could destroy the data. Without him, the transfer lived. She exhaled. Let him go, Hayes. You can't carry the data in your head. I don't need to, he said. I just need to carry her. He pointed at Dr. Harris, still slumped and wired into the core processor. And then Kate understood. The transfer wasn't just uploading data. It was imprinting Harris's mind with the composite knowledge. They were going to extract her, then clone the data from her brain into recruits. 98%. Hayes smiled at Kate like they were back at a training range, like none of the blood between them mattered. You always thought this was about killing people, he said softly. It was about replacing them. Then he fired. Not at Garcia. At the ceiling conduit. Electricity screamed through the lab. Sparks cascaded. The room plunged into total darkness as backup systems tried and failed to engage. Kate moved through the blackout like she had been born there. One sharp whistle, their prearranged signal. Carter and Miller fired blind toward the muzzle flash of Hayes's gun, not to hit, to scatter him. He vanished into the dark, dragging Garcia with him. Kate sprinted, following the sound of boots over glass. Shapes flickered in her night vision. Hayes's heat signature darted toward the far service hall with Garcia in tow. Cover Harris, she barked to Thompson. Then she was gone, chasing Hayes into the guts of the facility. The service hall was a concrete throat vibrating with klaxons. Emergency strobes painted everything in freezing snapshots. Hayes dragged Garcia like dead weight, firing blind behind him. Kate moved in silence, steps cushioned on the grated floor. Her heart was steady, her breathing controlled. She thought of Michael bleeding in Afghan sand, whispering, all the way through. Hayes spun to fire. She was already inside his guard, slamming her shoulder into his ribs. They crashed into the wall. Garcia hit the floor rolling. Hayes's pistol skittered away in sparks. His elbow smashed toward her jaw, blocked. Knee strike, she countered, twisting him off balance. He fought like she did, efficient, surgical, no wasted motion. You could have been legend, he hissed, grappling. Instead, you're a ghost. She twisted his wrist until the bone cracked. He dropped to his knees. Ghosts don't miss, she said, and drove her blade through the comm module on his vest, not flesh, but the uplink transmitter strapped to his rig. Sparks spat. The remote connection died with a dying whine. Inside the lab, Garcia's corrupted code finally injected, erasing the outbound data midstream. Transfer failed. Hayes saw the confirmation flash on the hall monitor. Something like grief cut through his face, quick, raw, and gone. She'll kill you for this, he said. Who? She asked. He smiled through bloodied teeth. The woman who runs Cerberus, the one who saved you from that fire in Kabul, the one who built you. Kate froze for half a heartbeat. Then Hayes lunged last, desperate. She sidestepped, pivoted, and slammed him against the wall. A chokehold, clean and final, until his body went slack. She let him fall gently, like setting down something broken. Carter's voice crackled in her comm. Status. Garcia secure. Hayes neutralized. Data destroyed. Copy. Harris alive. Thompson stabilizing. Kate looked down at Hayes, unconscious at her feet. Not dead, not yet. And for a moment she felt something break loose in her chest, not relief, not triumph. Hollow. She turned away. They regrouped in the main lab. The sprinklers hissed steam into the cold air. Harris lay on a stretcher, pale but conscious, IV snaking into her arm. Her voice rasped. You stopped it. Kate nodded. Harris's eyes, cloudy but sharp beneath it all, fixed on her. Then she'll come for you. Who? Carter asked. Harris's lips trembled. Codename Valkyrie. Kate flinched, so slightly only Harris saw. Valkyrie, the name they'd whispered in black corridors, the woman who had overseen the Nomad project, the woman who had built Kate and Michael from the bones of their old lives. Her mother. Before Kate could speak, the base intercom crackled. All teams stand down, hostiles retreating, casualty reports in progress. The klaxons fell silent, the smoke thinned. For the first time in an hour, the world exhaled. But inside Kate, the war had only shifted shape. Because if Valkyrie knew Kate was alive, she wouldn't stop at Phoenix. She would burn the world to erase her mistake. Kate looked at Harris. Get her to medical, double guards. Carter hesitated. And you? Her eyes went to the blood-streaked floor, where Hayes had stood smiling. Valkyrie knows I'm breathing, she said softly. I have to make sure she regrets finding out. Then she walked out, silent and certain, as alarms echoed faintly through the cooling air. Why did Victory feel emptier than the grave she'd climbed out of? The base lay wrapped in an uneasy hush, the kind that follows storms too violent to comprehend. Sunlight bled low across Fort Liberty, staining the fractured concrete in molten gold. The smoke was gone, the alarms silenced, but the echoes lingered in scorched walls, in blood dried to dark rust on the lab floor, and most of all in the hollow way people avoided looking at her as she passed. They had seen what she was now, and no one knew what to do with that. Kate walked the quiet corridors of the medical wing, boots clicking faintly on the tile. Her gear was gone, replaced by clean fatigues that still felt foreign, too light like borrowed skin. The silence pressed on her skull. No gunfire, no clipped radio chatter, just the hum of fluorescence and her own heart refusing to slow. Outside a recovery room she stopped, watched through the glass. Dr. Harris lay curled under thin sheets, IVs snaking into the hollow of her elbow. A nasal cannula fed her breath in soft, mechanical sighs. Her hair, usually bound in a precise braid, spilled across the pillow like loose gray thread. Carter stood beside the bed, silent. No swagger now. His hands were buried deep in his pockets, jaw tight, as though he couldn't decide if he was guarding Harris or apologizing for being alive when better people weren't. He didn't see Kate watching him. That was fine. She wasn't sure what she would have said anyway. Harris stirred, opened her eyes. Pale irises flicked toward the glass, found Kate, and in that dim, wavering gaze Kate saw recognition and guilt. She turned away before either could become words. The observation deck at the far edge of the base was empty, windswept, starring out over miles of red desert that shimmered like old scars in the dying light. Kate leaned on the cold rail and closed her eyes. She let it hit her, the weight she'd held off until now. The dead in Afghanistan, Michael's voice bleeding into sand, the ambush, the 5 years in shadow while the world thought she was bones under stone, the look on Hayes's face when he whispered her mother's name. Her mother, the word still felt like a knife dragged slow across old nerve. Valkyrie. In another life she had been Evelyn Mara Reynolds, scientist, strategist, savior in public memory. In private she had been something colder, sharper. She hadn't raised Kate. She had engineered her, stripped out fear, burned away hesitation, built 2 children into living weapons, then sent them into fire. Kate had thought she'd buried Evelyn with Michael, thought she had severed that bloodline of ruin in Kabul when the safe house burned. But Valkyrie was still out there. And now she knew Kate still breathed. A thin desert wind scraped across her face. It smelled of dust and iron. If Valkyrie was truly coming, everyone Kate had left would die in the crossfire. Harris, Carter, even her uncle. The thought sliced through her calm like wire. She gripped the railing harder, fingers trembling despite her will. You don't get to break, Michael had whispered once when her hands had been slick with someone else's blood. We don't break. We bend until they snap first. She opened her eyes. The sun had dropped below the mountains. The desert lay drowned in purple shadow. Her comm buzzed softly. Kate, came her uncle's graveled voice. My office now. Colonel Reynolds's office was dark except for a single desk lamp painting brass and oak in warm halos. He stood by the window, a silhouette carved from years of war. Files were spread across the desk like fallout, mission reports, autopsies, fragments of data drives burned half clean. "You should be resting," he said without looking at her. "I don't rest," she said. "I know." He turned. His face was worn, lined deeper than she remembered, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp. He slid a thin dossier across the desk toward her. "This is what we have on Valkyrie." Kate opened it. The file was mostly blank. Redactions carved it down to bone. A handful of blurry surveillance stills from a decade of shadows. European cities, war zones, underground biotech facilities. Each one with a figure at the edges, never centered, always watching. Tall, immaculate, blonde hair silvering. Eyes hidden by sunglasses even in the dark. A ghost wearing her mother's face. "She rebuilt Cerberus from the inside out," Reynolds said. "Funded by black accounts from 4 governments. They answer to no flag now." Kate studied the last photo, a burned facility outside Prague, a single figure walking away from the flames. Evelyn's posture was unmistakable. "She's building a new generation," Kate murmured. "Better than me, cleaner, no trauma scars, just obedience." "Exactly." Kate closed the file slowly. Her voice was calm, but inside it was shaking. "Then I have to end her." Reynolds watched her in silence for a long moment. Then, "You can't kill her, Kate." "Yes," she said, "I can." "You don't understand." His tone cut. "Valkyrie didn't just create Nomad, she's part of it." Kate's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "She used the neural architecture she built for you and Michael on herself. Integrated enhancements, reflex augmentation, memory graphs. She made herself the prototype." Her stomach turned to ice. "You mean she?" "She's faster than you," Reynolds said. "Stronger, more ruthless. And she knows every flaw in you because she put them there." Silence swelled between them, heavy, final. "She'll kill anyone near you to break your focus," Reynolds said. "She'll start with the people you still care about." Kate pictured Harris's pale face, Carter's hollow eyes by her bed, the way the medics had stepped aside when she passed, as if she were a blade still dripping. "They'll be targets just by standing near me," she said quietly. "Yes." She stared at the floor. The old instinct stirred. Sever all ties, vanish, become the ghost again. Hunt from the dark. Leave nothing for Valkyrie to strike at. Her uncle seemed to read her mind. "If you disappear now, they'll think you ran. They'll stop trusting you." "They already don't." "That's different," he said. "Right now they're afraid of you. Fear can harden into respect. Running turns it into hatred." Kate said nothing. The quiet beat between them felt like years. Reynolds's voice softened. "Don't let her make you what she is." "She already did," Kate said. Then she stood and left. The barracks were half dark when she entered, her boots soft on the tile. Most soldiers avoided her eyes. A few gave curt nods, sharp and hollow. Carter was at the far table, cleaning his rifle with mechanical precision. Thompson played cards silently beside him, losing on purpose to Walsh, who said nothing as usual. Miller hunched over Garcia's tablet, scrolling without comprehension. They all looked up when she stopped at their table. Carter's jaw flexed. "Ma'am." "Tomorrow morning," she said. 400 full gear, undisclosed operation." "Where to?" Thompson asked warily. "Classified." "You expect us to just follow you blind?" Miller's voice cracked. "No," she said. "I expect you to decide. I won't hold you if you don't trust me." She turned to go, then paused. "I'm going after Valkyrie." The name landed like a dropped blade. No one moved. Even Walsh's eyes flickered. Carter rose slowly. "If she's what Hayes said, this is suicide." "Yes," Kate said. "But if she finishes what she's building, no one here lives long enough to bury me." Silence, the air thick as wet cloth. Then Carter said, 400. She nodded once and walked away. She didn't sleep. Sleep meant dreams, and dreams meant Michael's voice screaming in fire. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the concrete floor of her quarters, lights off, blindfold on. Slow, measured breathing. The old nomad meditations. Feel every muscle, trace every nerve. Listen for the places fear still lived in her bones and starve them of oxygen. Fear was oxygen to Valkyrie. She wouldn't feed her. The hours passed like cold water. Outside, the desert swallowed the night whole. Inside, Kate became stone. When the knock came at 03:58, she was already standing. Carter stood in the doorway, armor strapped, rifle slung, eyes hollow but steady. The others stood behind him, silhouettes in the dim. "Where to?" he asked. "Black Ridge," she said. "An old Cerberus staging hub. We burn it to the ground." "And after that?" She looked past them into the dark, past this base, past the deserts and cities and memories. To her, Kate said. They said nothing more. They just followed her into the waiting black helicopter, as the first hint of gray touched the horizon, like ghosts choosing their own haunting. Why did the air feel heavier the closer they flew to where she was born? The Black Hawk cut through the pre-dawn like a blade of shadow, rotor wash shredding the cold desert air. Below, the Mojave stretched in endless ribs of rock and dust, pale under a dying moon. Inside the cabin, red lights painted Kate and her squad in the color of blood before it spills. No one spoke. Carter sat across from her, helmet off, jaw locked, eyes unreadable. Thompson dozed upright, arms folded tight. Miller stared at nothing, lips moving silently as if arguing with ghosts. Garcia tapped at his wrist console, hands shaking, trying not to show it. Walsh sat still, as always, silent as the dead he never named. They were following her into nothing, into myth. Kate watched them from behind her stillness. She saw the tremor in Miller's knee, the micro flick of Carter's eyes when the helicopter banked too sharp, the small clenched fist Garcia hid in his lap. She saw what they didn't want her to see. They were afraid, and they were coming anyway. A sliver of dawn bled over the horizon, washing the desert in bruised gold. She turned to the window. Beyond the broken ridgelines, an old scar of road wound toward the distant teeth of the Black Ridge Range. Somewhere in those blackened canyons lay the place she'd last seen her brother alive. And the place Valkyrie had erased her from the world. She closed her eyes and let the memory take her. Sand, blood, Michael screaming through the radio, Hayes's voice breaking, the blast tearing through the ridge bunker, her body folding into blackness. Evelyn's face on the edge of the firelight, not coming to help, just watching as the world caved in. Then nothing. When she opened her eyes again, the sun had cleared the ridge, cutting her in half with gold light. She flexed her hands until the tremor stilled. The pilot's voice crackled over comms, 1 minute out. They set down in a dried riverbed at the base of the ridge. The air smelled like rust and old bones. Silence pressed down like the weight of buried things. Black Ridge had once been a Cerberus staging hub, a labyrinth of Cold War silos gutted and rewired into covert labs, officially abandoned for decades. Unofficially, it had whispered through the black circuits ever since Kate vanished. She led them up the crumbling switchbacks, boots crunching over shattered stone. The morning light didn't reach this place. It just stopped at the ridge and went no further, as if even the sun remembered what was buried here. They reached the outer fence, rusted, torn. Past it, the bunker's concrete mouth yawned from the rock like the skull of something long dead. No birds, no wind, only the faint hum of old generators somewhere deep inside. Garcia scanned with a handheld M-meter. It chirped faintly. Power's live, low output, automated systems maybe. Or someone left the lights on, Thompson muttered. No one leaves lights on here, Kate said softly. They breached the outer hatch. Inside, the air was stale and cold, tasting of copper and mold. Their boots echoed off cracked tiles, paint peeled in long, curling strips. The halls were choked with shadows, broken only by their helmet lamps slicing thin tunnels through the dark. "Place feels dead," Miller whispered. "Dead things don't hum," Walsh murmured. It was the first thing he'd said all morning. They moved deeper. The further they went, the more wrong it became. Signs of abandonment twisted into signs of use. Fresh scuff marks on the floor. New wiring snaked along old walls. Empty ammo crates stacked with methodical care. Kate stopped at a fork, crouched, ran a finger across the floor. Fine dust, except for a thin trail where boots had passed recently. "They're here," she said. Carter's voice came low. "Then they know we are too." "Good," she said, and started forward. The trail led them into the central atrium, a cavern of cracked concrete under a hanging catwalk. Rusted signage still read Ridge Research Unit 4 in fading letters. And in the center of the room stood something new. A glass cylinder rose from the floor, humming with soft blue light. Inside floated a pale shape, suspended in viscous fluid, half-formed, human in outline but not yet human. Electrodes webbed its skull. Its eyes were closed. Garcia stared pale. "They're growing operators." Kate stepped closer. Her voice came like broken glass. "No, they're printing them." He blinked. "Printing." "They harvest memory cores from dead soldiers," she said. "Burn them into blank neural scaffolds. Birth them full-grown, preloaded." "How many?" Carter asked tightly. Kate's jaw flexed. "As many as they want." Garcia's wrist console pinged. "I'm picking up active uplink traffic. Encrypted." "Where?" she asked. "Deep vault, sublevel 3. Kate turned. "Then that's where Valkyrie is." "Wait," Thompson said. "If she's here, why hasn't she killed us already?" "She doesn't need to," Kate said, eyes hard. "She's waiting." "Why?" Miller whispered. "Because she thinks I'll hesitate," Kate said, "like Michael did." They stared at her, silent. "Plant charges," she ordered. "If we don't come back, this place doesn't either." They descended deeper, into corridors that no longer resembled any human design. The walls turned black, smooth, seamless. Organic somehow, like bone grown into the shape of architecture. Their footsteps were swallowed. The air buzzed faintly, like distant bees trapped in the wires. Garcia's screen flickered with code fragments. "This isn't Cerberus standard. It's newer." "It's hers," Kate said. At sublevel 3, the stairs ended in a vault door of mirror black alloy. No handle, no panel, just smooth death. Garcia crouched with his tools, trying not to tremble. "Give me 2 minutes." "You have 30 seconds," she said. Sweat beaded his forehead. He slid probes, tapped sequences, cursed under his breath. The hum grew louder. Then the door shuddered and split down the center with a hiss. They raised rifles. Beyond lay a cavern of light. Banks of servers towered like obsidian monoliths, veined with pulsing blue code. Fiber optic veins glowed like arteries. In the center of the room, a raised dais bore a single black chair bristling with neural ports. It was empty, but the air felt watched. Garcia's screen flared, his eyes widened. "She's not here." "What do you mean not?" Carter began. "She's remote linking," Garcia said. "Running this place by neural projection, no physical presence." Kate stepped onto the dais. The hum deepened, resonant, like something inside the walls recognized her. Then the speakers hissed to life. "Hello, my little ghost." The voice was calm, melodic, and cold. It slid over her skin like ice water down old scars. Every muscle in her body knew that tone before her mind could form the name. "Valkyrie. You survived my fire," the voice said. "Impressive, few do." Kate's pulse slowed instead of spiking. "You watched me die." "I watched you fail," Valkyrie said. "Then I built better from your ashes." "Better than me?" Kate asked softly. Better than human, her mother said. No fear, no grief, no love to cloud the math. The future will not be carried by trembling hands, Catherine. You tried to erase me. I perfected you. Kate's fingers curled on her rifle. Her chest was stone, but somewhere deep old fractures ached. Where are you? She said. Everywhere, Valkyrie said. But if you insist on dying with answers, follow the ghosts you buried in the ice. Greenland, Kate whispered. The speakers cut, the hum faded, the servers went dark. They were alone in the cavern, the cold sinking in like teeth. Greenland, Carter said. She's gone to the cryosite, Kate murmured. Nomad's original lab. What's there? Thompson asked. Every blueprint she used to build me, Kate said, and Michael's brain core. The silence that followed was hollow enough to echo. Kate turned, blow this place. They exfiltrated silent and fast. Explosive charges pulsed green on the cracked walls behind them. The dawn outside had sharpened into white sun as they descended the ridge. When the charges detonated, the earth bucked. A bloom of fire gutted the ridge, blasting concrete and bone skyward. The shockwave rolled over them like hot wind. Black Ridge collapsed inward, a dying beast folding into ash. They watched from the riverbed, faces unreadable. Kate didn't look back. Next move? Carter asked. Greenland, she said. We end this where it began. Walsh broke his silence. If she has Michael's core. I know, Kate said quietly. She should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt like she just walked past her own grave again. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Valkyrie was waiting. And this time, she wouldn't be content to watch. Why did this place still remember her bones when the world had tried to forget them? The Arctic night swallowed them whole. The C-130 roared low over an endless expanse of white, moonlight glinting off jagged ice fields and the black ridges of frozen mountains. The world below looked dead, not silent, just holding its breath. Inside the dim cargo bay, Kate sat buckled into the webbing, eyes closed. Cold gnawed through her parka, but she didn't shiver. She hadn't shivered in years. Her breath came slow, controlled, condensing in faint ghosts around her lips. Across from her, Carter watched her like a man studying a live grenade he decided to carry anyway. The others huddled in grim silence. Miller dozed, rifle hugged to his chest. Thompson chewed a protein bar like it had wronged her. Garcia scrolled schematics on his console, hands trembling despite the thermal gloves. Walsh sat perfectly still, as if carved from the same ice waiting below. They all wore cold-weather assault suits. Lightweight, thermal-sealed, snow-camouflaged. Cerberus tech stolen from fallen ghosts. ETA 10 minutes. The loadmaster barked over the engine thunder. Kate opened her eyes. The Nomad cryosite, Greenland's bones. She had never been here, not awake, but some part of her remembered, in pieces, flashes of steel tables, cold hands wiring heat into her bones. Evelyn's voice, soft and surgical. Don't be afraid of the pain. Fear is just noise. Noise. That was all she had been to her mother. Signal interference to burn away. She flexed her hands until the tremor stilled. The C-130 banked low. A black scar of cracked glacier appeared below, moonlit and jagged, like the earth had been split by a blade. At its center, a dark square. An ancient elevator shaft sunk deep into the ice, long abandoned on record, but she could feel it humming even from the air. Alive. Drop zone ready, the loadmaster called. They hooked lines to static lines overhead. Final checks, rifles slung, goggles down. The rear ramp groaned open, spilling frigid wind into the cargo bay like a living thing. Kate stepped to the edge and jumped. They hit the ice hard, parachutes whipping down into the darkness. The wind howled across the glacier like a voice mourning something it could not name. They packed chutes, checked gear, moved fast. Heat was life here and motion was heat. The elevator shaft rose from the ice like the tooth of some buried titan, black steel rimed in frost, half collapsed, wrapped in rusted scaffolds. Snow swept through its gaping mouth. "Power's live," Garcia whispered, scanner glowing faintly. "Buried grid, massive draw." "Valkyrie's awake," Kate said. They clipped on crampons and descended the collapsed scaffolds, boots scraping iron and ice. The shaft plunged deep into blue darkness, swallowing their headlamps like droplets of light. Cold wrapped them in hard fingers. Breath steamed white. 200 meters down, the shaft widened into a domed cavern of ancient ice. And there it was. The Nomad Cradle. A vast circle of black alloy half buried in the glacier's ribs, rimmed with dead consoles and glass observation pods hanging like frozen tears. The air thrummed with low, constant vibration, too deep to hear, only felt in bone. Kate stopped. Her heart gave one hard pulse and went cold again. This was where she'd been unmade and rebuilt, where Michael had stood shaking in his paper gown, pretending not to be afraid, where Evelyn had smiled like a sculptor at her raw marble. She forced the memories down like bile. "Form wedge, watch the flanks." They crossed the frozen floor, rifles up, boots crunching softly. The central dais stood intact, caked in frost. At its center rose a cylinder of black glass 3 meters high, wrapped in cables that pulsed with faint blue light. Inside, suspended in glowing gel, floated a human brain. Michael, or what was left of him. Garcia's voice shook. "Neural core is active, full preservation mode." "Can you access it?" Kate asked. "Maybe, but it's air-gapped. No external ports." "They'll move it soon," she said. "She came here to harvest him." "Why?" Carter asked quietly. "He's been dead 5 years." Kate stared at the glass. "Because she's going to build him again," she said, "and make him obey." A voice flowed through the cavern like silk, dragged over razors. "Not obey," it said, "transcend." They spun, rifles up. She was standing on the upper catwalk above the dais, framed in moonlight bleeding through fractured ice. Valkyrie. Tall, hair silver as forged steel bound in a severe knot, cold eyes like knives dulled only by patience, wrapped in a sleek black exosuit that shimmered faintly with adaptive mesh. No rifle, no armor plates, just absolute stillness as if the air itself obeyed her. Carter whispered, "She's not even armed." "She doesn't need to be," Kate said. Her mother's gaze slid over the squad like they were nothing more than weather, then settled on Kate. "You came home," she said softly. "This isn't my home," Kate said. "Of course it is. Every atom of you was carved here." "Then you built a mistake." "No," Valkyrie said. "I built the prototype, and now I will perfect you." Kate's chest was stone, but inside, something small and frantic beat its fists. "Michael died because of you." "Michael died because he loved you," Valkyrie said. "Love is a flaw. I will cut it out of him this time." Kate's vision blurred red at the edges. She anchored her voice to the floor. "I won't let you." Valkyrie smiled small, almost fond. "You can't stop me. You are me." And then she moved. A blur of black slicing from the catwalk. She hit the ice floor soundlessly, a ripple of motion too fast to track. Kate's rifle was gone from her hands before she even registered the strike. Valkyrie's elbow drove into her sternum, sending her skidding back across the ice. Carter fired 3 clean bursts. Valkyrie wasn't there anymore. She was behind him, moving like liquid math, disarming him in a flicker of bone and steel. Thompson charged, roaring, only to be spun into the air and dropped limp. Walsh's shot cracked the air. She caught it with her palm, the bullet sparking off some invisible field woven into her suit. "She's reading our moves," Garcia gasped. "Neural predictive counter." "She built it from me," Kate coughed, dragging herself upright. "Flank her." They scattered. Miller Dove left, Walsh right. Carter grabbed Thompson's vest, hauling her behind cover. Valkyrie weaved through their crossfire like smoke, not faster, just always where their bullets weren't going to be. She was beautiful, terrifying, precise. And Kate saw it tiny, buried under the perfection. A rhythm, a sequence, a pattern her mother couldn't erase from herself. Michael's training pattern. The one they had built together as children when they learned to fight before they learned to grieve. Kate exhaled, centered, let her body remember. She feinted left, drew Valkyrie's counter, slid inside it. Their hands collided, locked. Heat slammed through her arm like electricity. Valkyrie's eyes flared just slightly with recognition. "You remember," she whispered. Kate drove her head into her mother's faceplate, cracked the composite shell. Valkyrie staggered. Carter seized the beat, tackled her low, Walsh firing cover above. Kate spun to the cylinder. "Garcia now." "I can't crack it." "Don't overload it." Garcia hesitated, then tore open a panel and jammed a thermal charge onto the power conduit. Sparks screamed. The cylinder's fluid began to boil, cables thrashing. Valkyrie roared, a sound not human, and hurled Carter off her like a rag doll. She sprinted for the cylinder, faster than sight. Kate hit her full body, driving her back. "Michael made his choice," she hissed. "He chose wrong," Valkyrie snarled. "Then let him stay dead." She slammed the detonator. Heat tore through the cavern like a sun being born. The cylinder ruptured in a geyser of boiling fluid and blue arcs of electricity. The shockwave hurled them all to the ice. Kate hit hard, ears screaming, lungs crushed. When the glare faded, the cylinder was molten slag. Michael's brain was gone, freed, or lost forever. Valkyrie stood on one knee amid the wreckage, her suit flickering, blood bright on her temple. Her eyes burned, not with rage. With something older, sadder. "You could have been eternal," she said softly. "I'd rather be human," Kate whispered. Then the glacier began to collapse. They ran through fire and ice. The cradle disintegrated behind them, the dome cracking, ice slabs falling like God's teeth. Alarms howled as ancient systems tore themselves apart. They sprinted up the scaffold shaft, snow and molten steel raining. Carter half-carried Thompson, who limped bleeding but alive. Garcia's hands were blue with cold but still clutching his console like a relic. Kate brought up the rear, rifle forgotten, eyes locked on the blackness collapsing behind her. No sign of Valkyrie. They burst onto the surface as the glacier bucked like a living thing. The cradle caved in with a sound like the world exhaling. Fire boiled out of the ice. A column of black smoke clawed into the stars. They threw themselves behind a ridge as the shockwave rolled over them in a wall of snow and steam. Silence followed, just their ragged breathing, and the slow hiss of cooling metal far below. Kate pushed up on trembling arms. The nomad cradle was gone, erased. And so was her mother. "Maybe." Carter knelt beside her, blood running from his brow. "Did we kill her?" Kate stared into the crater, swallowing moonlight. "She doesn't die easy," she said. No one spoke after that. They just watched the smoke coil into the Arctic night like the last breath of something that wasn't finished dying. Why did the wind feel hollow, like the world had already decided they were ghosts? The helicopter droned through the gray Arctic dawn, a black silhouette dragging itself across endless frozen sea. Inside, the cabin was silent except for the thrum of rotor blades and the slow creak of bodies too tired to sleep. They sat slumped in their harnesses, streaked with soot and frost. Carter's brow was stitched from eyebrow to hairline, swollen and raw. Thompson's left leg was splinted, painkiller patch dulling her eyes to half-lidded glass. Garcia's hands shook around his console. Miller muttered to himself in fractured loops. Walsh sat with his helmet on, visor down, face unreadable. Kate sat by the open door, strapped in, eyes fixed on the black horizon. The freezing wind flayed her face, but she didn't move. She watched the smoke from the cradle still curling behind them far away on the ice, like some dying leviathan clawing at the sky as it sank. They had burned the heart out of her mother's machine. But she didn't feel like they'd won. She felt hollow, lighter, as if some piece of her had stayed buried in that collapsing tomb beside Michael's ashes, the part that used to believe endings could save you. She touched her collarbone, where his dog tag rested under her thermal layers. It was cold, dead cold, like her mother's hands had been. They landed back at Fort Liberty near midnight, Nevada air sharp and dry, a knife after the Arctic cold. The base was lit harsh and bright under floodlights, security doubled, Humvees at every gate. The tarmac shimmered with heat haze even at night. But something was off. Too quiet, no running boots, no voices on the wind, just an expectant silence hanging over the base like breath held too long. As they disembarked, Colonel Reynolds was waiting at the edge of the pad. His uniform was rumpled, eyes hollow, jaw clenched like stone. Kate's boots touched the concrete. His eyes met hers. And she knew. "What happened?" she asked. His voice cracked like dry wood. "Harris." Her stomach turned to iron. "She's gone," he said. "Gone?" Carter demanded. "As in?" "Taken," Reynolds said. Her room was empty, door codes bypassed, no sign of forced entry, no alarms triggered. Kate's voice came like a knife dragged slow. "When?" 18 hours ago. Before Greenland. Before they'd even set foot in the ice. Valkyrie hadn't stayed to guard her empire. She had been here. Kate's fists curled until her nails dug blood. "Why Harris?" Reynolds's eyes were glass. "Because Harris built Nomad's architecture. She's the only one alive who can rebuild what you just destroyed." Kate closed her eyes for one beat, then opened them cold. "She won't." The briefing room smelled of stale coffee and fear. Maps glowed across the table like open wounds. Red tracking pings scattered across continents, Cerberus cells the analysts had flagged. None near Nevada. Harris's medical tag blinked faint blue from a satellite ping over the Gulf of Mexico, then cut out. Gone. Garcia hunched over his console, hands shaking with micro-tremors. "They're masking her vitals through a mesh of decoy signals. Could be anywhere now." "They'll kill her when she finishes rebuilding the system," Thompson said flatly. Kate stared at the blank ocean. "They won't kill her. They need her to finish me first." No one spoke. Reynolds finally said, "We have 2 days, maybe 3. After that, they'll vanish completely off-grid." Carter leaned on the table, voice rough. "So where do we start?" Kate's voice was calm, but her knuckles were white. "Where Valkyrie would run if she thought I'd follow." Walsh spoke for the first time in hours, his voice like gravel dragged over quiet. "And where, that?" Kate looked up. "Home," she said. Her old house stood on a forgotten stretch of Wyoming prairie, wind-blown and skeletal, windows blank as dead eyes. She hadn't been back since before the war, since before Nomad, since she'd still been someone who believed a childhood could survive fire. They approached silent under a moon like tarnished silver, boots whispering through dry grass. No lights glowed in the windows. No hum of power, just the wind hissing through splintered siding. Kate stopped at the porch steps. Her chest was iron, her lungs ash. She had been 8 the last time she'd stood here without fear. She raised her rifle, eased the door open. Inside the house was a mausoleum. Dust lay thick on the stripped floorboards. Wallpaper sagged. The air stank faintly of old oil and cold metal. Her beams swept through the gutted living room. Empty. "Clear," Carter whispered behind her. They advanced room by room, shadows slicing through moonlight. The kitchen, the hall, the stairs. Then Kate stopped. At the end of the hall, where her childhood bedroom had been, a single bare bulb glowed. She moved toward it, slow, rifle steady. Inside, the room had been gutted down to concrete and reassembled into something surgical. A single steel table, a bank of monitors, a small cot neatly made. And on the table sat a black data core the size of a fist. Her pulse hammered. She approached it careful as if it might bite. The screen on the nearest monitor flickered to life. Her mother's face bloomed out of the dark. Valkyrie. Not in person. A live feed, eyes cold, lips curved like a blade's edge. "Welcome home," she said. The squad froze. No one breathed. Kate's voice came soft, razor-thin. "Where is Harris?" "Alive," Valkyrie said. "For now. She's rebuilding the architecture you burned." "Where?" Valkyrie's eyes glimmered. "Somewhere your grief will recognize." Kate's jaw flexed. "You're taunting me." "I'm sharpening you," Valkyrie said. "You killed your brother's mind. Let's see if you can kill what's left of your own." The feed cut. The data core blinked once, then detonated. Kate moved first, body slamming Carter and Garcia down as the world went white. The shockwave gutted the room, shattering plaster, flinging splinters of glass like shrapnel. Dust swallowed everything. Silence slammed down. Her ears rang. She shoved debris off her body, coughed through grit. "Status." "Alive," Thompson rasped, bleeding from her temple. Miller groaned. Walsh hauled him up. Carter staggered upright, eyes wild. Garcia clutched his forearm, scorched but whole. Kate stood in the ruin of her childhood bedroom. Her mother had burned it again, this time without fire. Outside, the wind howled across the empty fields like laughter stretched too thin. Back at Fort Liberty, the sky was just turning gray. The squad moved like ghosts through debrief, medics patching them in silence. Kate sat alone in the observation deck above the training yard as the sun clawed over the mountains, bathing the base in gold that felt like mockery. Reynolds joined her without speaking. He stood with his hands clasped behind him, eyes on the waking soldiers below. None of them knew yet. None of them understood what was coming. "She's unraveling you," he said finally. "Yes," Kate said. "Good." His voice was gravel. "Because you fight better when there's nothing left to lose." She said nothing. She just watched the sunlight climb her boots like it was trying to set her on fire. That night the squad gathered in the hangar, cleaned gear, repacked ammo, said nothing. The silence was heavier than their rifles. Kate entered last, strapped in her vest, fresh sidearm, clean boots, eyes like cold stars. She stood in front of them. "She has Harris. She'll rebuild the nomad architecture and print her army," she said. "If that happens, nothing else we've done matters." "No idea where she's holding her," Garcia said hollowly. "Yes," Kate said, "I do." They looked up. "She'll take her somewhere that never existed, a place even the maps forgot." Kate's gaze was steady, anchored. "Nomad 1, the original black site, South Pacific Trench Line. I found the coordinates hidden in Michael's training files." "Then that's where we go," Carter said. Kate nodded once. "This is it," she said. "We go in quiet, we leave nothing standing." They rose. No battle cries, no speeches. Just quiet resolve, like people already writing their names on headstones. Later, alone in her quarters, Kate sat on the floor in the dark, Michael's dog tag clutched in her hand. Her mother had taken Harris, burned her home, tried to hollow her out. It was working. She felt like a shadow of herself. No fear, no grief, just cold angles and unfinished hate. And for the first time in years, it scared her. She pressed her forehead to her knees, whispered so softly it hurt. "Please let me come back." Then she stood, slid the dog tag back under her collar, locked the fear behind her ribs. Tomorrow, she would finish what her mother started. Or she would burn with her. Why did this last march feel less like war, and more like walking into her own grave? The ocean was black as oil, stretching to a horizon that refused to dawn. The transport ship cut through it like a silent knife, bow carving waves that glimmered dull under a cold moon. No flags flew, no transponder pinged, just steel and intent. Kate stood alone at the prow, wind tearing through her hair. The spray salted her lips, cold and clean like old grief. Far behind her, the ship's deck glowed faintly where the squad moved like ghosts, checking gear, chambering rounds, saying nothing. No jokes. No fear on their faces now, just the hollow quiet of people who'd made peace with dying. This was where it ended. Nomad 1. The first black site. The cradle before the cradle. Buried in a trench south of any map, beneath miles of ocean where no rescue could reach them. She touched the dog tag at her collar. Michael's name was fatting from the steel, the letters soft with wear. She closed her fist around it until the edge bit her palm. He had believed they could be human. Her mother had believed they could be gods. Kate wasn't sure what she believed anymore, only that she had to end this. She turned from the sea, gear up. They launched before dawn in a black submersible, a matte shadow sliding under waves that swallowed even moonlight. Inside, red lights painted their faces as they descended through endless pressure and silence. The water outside grew ink black, pressing close, erasing the world. At 6,000 meters, the sonar pinged something vast. The trench opened beneath them, like the mouth of the planet. And there it was. Nomad 1. A fortress of black alloy fused into the ocean floor, shaped like a perfect circle, ribs of metal arching from a central spire like the bones of a buried god. No lights, no sound, just an aura like the ocean itself was holding its breath. Garcia whispered, "That place isn't supposed to exist." "Neither am I," Kate said. They breached the docking bay in silence, magnetic clamps latching them into place. The sub hissed open. Cold, sterile air spilled in, tasting of old metal and chemicals that hadn't seen daylight in decades. "Full stealth," Kate said, "no chatter." They moved through dead halls lit by their own beams. The walls were seamless, black, slightly warm under their gloves, not built, grown. Their boots made no sound on the strange surface. "This isn't human architecture," Thompson muttered. "It's hers," Kate said. They reached the central shaft, a hollow cylinder plunging deep through the heart of the fortress, lit by faint bioluminescent veins. At its center, suspended on spider-like gantries, floated the core chamber. And inside, through its glass skin, they saw her. Valkyrie. Standing in a cradle of light, arms outstretched, neural cables burrowed into her spine, her skull, her wrists, her ribs. Eyes closed. Floating half a meter above the floor like gravity had agreed to let her go. Around her, hundreds of black pods lined the walls, each holding a sleeping figure suspended in pale gel. "Clones not born" printed. Michael's face stared out from half of them. Garcia's breath hitched. "Oh, God." "She's building an army," Miller whispered. "She's building immortality," Kate said. Carter's voice cracked. "Then we burn it." Kate stared at her mother, haloed in cold light, cables pulsing with stolen life. "No," she said softly, "I kill it." They crossed the gantries like shadows. No alarms, no guards. Valkyrie didn't need them. The fortress itself seemed alive, like it was watching through the walls. The air throbbed faintly in time with her pulse. At the threshold of the core chamber, Kate raised a fist. The squad froze behind her. She stepped inside alone. The air was thick, electric, humming with a frequency her bones remembered. Valkyrie's eyes opened. Blue, not ice blue, electric, inhuman. "Hello, Catherine," she said, voice filling the chamber though her lips barely moved. "You came all the way down." "This ends now," Kate said. "Yes," Valkyrie said, "it does." The cables retracted from her body with wet clicks. She drifted down to the floor like a falling feather. No armor, no weapon, just that sleek exosuit glimmering faintly like the skin of some deep-sea predator. She smiled faintly. "Do you want to know the truth before you die?" Kate said nothing. You were my proof of concept, Valkyrie said. Pain stripped out, hesitation burned away, fear erased, love buried. Kate's voice came quiet, lethal. You failed. No, Valkyrie said. You corrupted. Michael infected you with love, and it broke you. Her eyes glimmered cold. I will excise that flaw from the next generation. Those things in the pods, Kate said, they aren't people. They will be, Valkyrie said, and they will never cry over dead brothers. Kate felt the old heat rise, grief like a blade. She anchored her breathing, centered, let it hurt, let it live. Then they'll never be stronger than me, she said. And she moved. Valkyrie blurred. They collided in a crack of bone and steel that echoed through the chamber like thunder trapped in a cage. Kate's blade flashed from her forearm sheath. Valkyrie caught it with 2 fingers, twisted, snapped it. A kick slammed Kate across the chamber. She hit the glass wall, rolled, came up firing. Rounds sparked off Valkyrie's suit like rain off stone. Still slower, Valkyrie said. Kate smiled through blood, still human. She lunged low, feinted, rolled under Valkyrie's counterstrike, slammed her elbow into the neural port on her mother's spine. Sparks spat. Valkyrie hissed, more animal than human, then backhanded her across the floor. The pods around them flickered, systems waking, fluid churning. Michael's faces stirred behind the glass. Garcia's voice crackled faint in her ear. Charges set. But if we blow them now, pressure collapse'll kill you both. Not yet, she rasped. Valkyrie stalked closer, unhurried. You are obsolete. Kate dragged herself up, blood dripping from her brow, breath ragged. I am the reason you're afraid enough to say that. She launched herself at Valkyrie with everything left. Strike, counter, bone on steel. The air cracked with the speed of them. Valkyrie caught her wrist. Kate let it break, used the pain to pivot, drove her other fist into her mother's jaw hard enough to spiderweb the exosuit visor. You fight like grief, Valkyrie hissed. I fight like him, Kate said. She drove both knees into Valkyrie's chest. The visor shattered. Evelyn's face glared out, older, bloodied, eyes burning with some mix of pride and fury and loss. You could have ruled, she rasped. I could have loved, Kate said. Then she wrenched the neural spine jack from her mother's back. Valkyrie screamed, a sound like tearing metal, and collapsed. The pods flickered, alarm shrieking. Systems cascaded into failure. Kate staggered back, lungs on fire, broken wrist dangling. Now Garcia. Detonating, he said. The squad poured fire into the pods as the charges blew. The chamber erupted in light and sound, glass shattering, gel boiling, cables whipping like dying snakes. Shockwaves tore through the core. The fortress screamed. Valkyrie crawled, blood streaking the floor. I made you. Kate knelt by her, calm in the chaos, and I chose to be more. She pressed Michael's dog tag into her mother's hand. Goodbye. Then she walked away as the ocean came down. They fled through collapsing halls, water roaring in like the sea itself wanted to erase this sin. The walls buckled, groaning. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes. The pressure rose like a god's fist closing. The sub waited in the flooding dock, engines screaming. They dove aboard, sealed the hatch, and shot upward through black chaos as Nomad 1 crumpled into the trench. Behind them, the ocean swallowed everything in silence. Dawn found them miles away, drifting on the waves. The squad sat slumped in their harnesses, silent, salt-streaked, alive. Thompson's head rested on Walsh's shoulder. Garcia clutched his console like a lifeline. Carter sat opposite Kate, eyes hollow and shining in the new light. She sat at the bow, the horizon bleeding gold. The wind smelled clean, empty. Her body ached, bones cracked when she breathed. Her wrist throbbed like broken glass. But for the first time in years, her chest felt light. Not whole, just light enough to breathe. Michael's dog tag lay warm in her palm from her skin. She lifted it to the wind. Free, she whispered. The sun rose, burning the horizon to white. 2 days later, Fort Liberty's flags flew at half-mast for the lives buried nameless in the sea. The world never learned what almost replaced it. They just saw a squad limp back from nowhere, silent, eyes older. Carter watched from the training yard as Kate crossed the base alone. No rank on her collar. No salute followed her. Soldiers parted unconsciously as she passed, not sure whether to fear her or thank her. She gave them nothing. No smile, no words, just quiet, steady steps toward the exit gate. She paused at the threshold, looked back once at the sun rising over the yard, catching on rifles and young eyes that didn't know yet what it cost to survive. Then she walked out into the desert, silent, certain, and free, because some ghosts don't fade. They lay down their chains and simply walk away. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.